Isn't it crazy that sometimes we fight through internal battles just to see ourselves in the same place again in the future? In this episode, we're going to look at what it looks like to transition from coping to healing and what is God's heart for us. Thank you all for joining us. If this is your first time, please consider subscribing to our channel. It's so important that we not only deal with, resolve internal conflicts, but we also look at if we are stuck in some unhealthy pattern. It's so important for us to take time and evaluate if we are settling for anything less other than complete healing and wholeness. So what does coping look like? Coping is kind of the act of trying to deal with a situation to overcome it. Often when we are coping, we're always in this constant fight. We're always in this constant combat mode, which can surely become exhausting in the long term. So what does healing look like? Healing is the process of becoming whole again. When you choose healing, not only are you choosing wholeness, but you're choosing to be completely set free from the root of the problem itself. So what does coping look like in our lives? First, some of us, we stay in guilt and shame. See, Christians, when we struggle, we add on shame, guilt to it. It's a question that how can you know God and still struggle? And often that struggle leads for us to comfort ourselves in negative words over ourselves. Matthew 15 says this, what comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart. Your words paint the picture of how you see yourself. So it's so important. Are you staying in guilt or shame, or are you really set free? Second, when you're coping, you either isolate or you jump into too many relationships. See, most people either suffer in silence and isolation, or they find a way to suppress all these emotions by jumping into too many relationships. Isn't it funny that we can be so much connected with people and yet be isolated and disconnected from everybody at the same time? Third, when you're coping, most of us run into a life of busyness. Busyness is rooted in the need to find a distraction to the real problems that you're going through. Fourth, most of us would settle for addictions when we are coping with things. We're either eating too much or we're going into substance abuse or other things that becomes addictions in our life. We're self-medicating ourselves on distractions because pain is at the center of our life. These unhealthy habits damage the body and create bigger problems in the long term. So what does healing look like? Healing begins when you're ready to fight for self-worth. Healing begins when you're ready to change the way you just think about yourself and even speak about yourself. The word says, be transformed by the renewal of your mind. And it says to think what is true, honorable, what is just, what is pure. Hence, we put on the mind of Christ and we talk and see ourselves from the viewpoint of Christ. You see, in Psalms 42, David does this. He talks to himself. He owns his own heart and he says, soul, why are you downcast? Put your hope in God. You have to take every thought captive, because anything that is not trained is something that can break down in battle. So fight for joy, fight to be present, fight for your own life, and moreover, fight for your healing. Second, healing begins when you're ready to fight for relationships. Isolation is the setup for destruction. In 1 Kings 19, you see this with Elijah again. He's going into the wilderness. He goes by himself. He even leaves his servant aside, and he's alone, and now he's depressed, and all he wants to do is die. See, no one should go into a battle isolated from their tribe and expect to win, no matter how skilled they are. God's remedy for our life has so much to do with the people that is placed in our life. Third, healing begins when you're ready to fight for servanthood. This is a place where you fight against self-centered life. Servanthood takes that selfishness away and that thought away of I should end it to becoming grateful for what you have, what God has already done, and serving others with what you have. Fourth, healing begins when you're ready to fight for rest. God created the Sabbath so you and I can take rest. When you rest, it's not only affirming God, it's you affirming that God is still your creator and He's still your sustainer for every area of your life. Rest is you putting your trust in God. Rest is God's way of refreshing our soul, our mind, our body. So even if you look at Genesis, you see this with Adam and Eve. Fig leaves became a mechanism of coping for them when what they needed is wholeness, healing, completeness in Jesus Himself. So we all need Jesus. When we are coping, we are in control of the situation and the outcome. But when we choose healing, we surrender our control in exchange for the freedom and healing that we find at the foot of the cross. So just want to encourage you to deal with the root of the problem, the pattern of the problem, over settling for just dealing with the symptoms of the problem. In the next few episodes, we're going to look at what it looks like to go through the process of healing. If this episode has blessed you, please consider sharing this with your family and friends. Thank you for listening, and God bless you.